Hello, welcome to IGN. I'm Daniel Krupa and this is Alex Simmons. Now, Sherlock Season 3 started in the UK, not this week, last week on New Year's Day, and the second episode went out last night. I think it's fair to say it's been a little bit divisive.
Yeah.
I'm reviewing the show for the site, and my reviews haven't gone down that well because I've kind of been a little bit more negative of Sherlock than maybe some other reviews that are out there and some of the people who've watched it. But there does seem to be a little bit of a change in public opinion, and the show has changed. I don't think that's a subjective point. The show has changed.
It certainly feels different from previous seasons.
Yeah.
I guess the first episode, you had such a kind of massive cliffhanger with the end of season 2 that, so much of the first episode had to be devoted to that, plus a mystery thrown in there. And then the second episode, I kind of wanted it to go back to the old ways, and it's like, right, an hour and a half dedicated to Sherlock solving a mystery. And it wasn't that at all. It was more...
It was a really weird, disorientating experience where he was being the best man and 30 minutes before he got to his best man speech. Now, I do think there was a bit of mystery in there.
Yes.
But it was really buried, and it took 30 minutes before he got to anything.
Yeah.
I do think the conceit, I said this in my review, that I think the conceit of him giving a best man speech and that as a means to, as a framing device for piecing together a mystery, and then there's going to be a murder at the wedding itself, is a really great concept, but I don't think they execute it at all.
It just took so long to actually, find its groove. And in fact, I'm not really sure it did find its groove, and that was the thing that I found hardest, is that every episode up until now, hour and a half long, I'm normally kind of, oh God. Anything else, I'm like, what else is happening? Whereas with Sherlock, I'm like, hour and a half gone, love it. Whereas last night's episode, like 45 minutes in, my wife was like, you're not really getting this, are you? And I'm like, well, I'm enjoying it, but not to the same level as I have other Sherlock episodes.
Yeah, so it seemed... I thought this week was going to be different because the first week's episode, I wasn't a huge fan of it. I thought it was okay. I felt like it was too burdened by the weight of that cliffhanger to really hit its stride. But I still liked it. But I just think the plot kind of got a little bit lost in the bonfire at night thing. So this episode, that first episode ended with Sherlock putting on the deer stalker, which he never used to want to wear because it kind of represented a public image of the detective that he kind of didn't want to identify with. Yeah. So he put it on and he went, time to be Sherlock Holmes. He stands out in front of the press. And I thought, here we go. Yeah. And then this week, it kind of almost felt curiously like an episode in a vacuum. Yeah. Because there was no consequence from last week, really. He mentioned his death, but there was no mention of John being kidnapped. No. There was no hint of the new villain who's going to pop up in the third episode, kind of not really established. Yeah. And I don't know, I think it's felt a bit lightweight.
Yeah, I think that to me is, like, if this was 2 episodes of a season of 10, then I probably wouldn't have minded so much. Yeah. But the fact that Sherlock comes around, every 2 years and you only get 3 episodes, it feels like we've been shortchanged, or it feels like I've been shortchanged, and that the third one is going to have to do something pretty amazing. Yeah. And is that going to build up to a cliffhanger? I don't know.
I don't know. It's whether they can commit to another series anytime soon. Yeah. So midway through the episode, there's a flashback to Watson and Holmes planning John's wedding. Yeah. And they're surrounded with table plans and serviettes and flower arrangements. And John's getting a bit bored by this, and he goes, can we just leave for like 10 minutes and let's go let's have an adventure, let's go on a case. And Sherlock doesn't really get it. He goes, surely you would want to plan your wedding. Yeah. He goes, you want to go on a case? Yeah. And I felt like it was almost speaking to the audience, and the audience was like, yes, let's go on a case. Yeah. And quickly they rattled through loads of cases that John and Sherlock did in the years gone by, and I just wanted to see them rather than focus on their wedding.
I think that's exactly it.
I just want to justify my review a bit more, because I think people have taken issue with the fact that I'm having go at it for doing something different, and I'm not necessarily. I know a show has to grow and change and do other things, and I want to learn more about the characters. But my point is, you can learn about those characters. Yeah. We have them for 2 seasons. We've learned about those characters while they are out solving a crime. Yeah. And people are saying, this isn't Poirot or Miss Marple. But of course, it's Sherlock Holmes, who is like the archetypal detective. I don't know how you can kind of elide that aspect of his character.
Well, I completely agree. Is that I think the vehicle for the story was great, and the way it was executed, not so. But if there was more focus on those anecdotes, and we got to the point of that best man speech much faster, and then spent the next hour kind of, dipping into little things, and then the big mystery. That would have worked far more.
Because what you're getting now, you're getting him as a character, which is it's okay, but it's just not what I want from it. And you're getting him doing his experimentations with the eyeball and the cup of tea.
Yeah.
You're getting that almost as an aside, rather than as the substance of the episode. Yeah. It's like, oh, it's him doing his Sherlock thing. Can you now be involved in this scene, which is a character scene? Yeah. And the greatest skill of any great TV show is marrying characterization and plot. So you learn more about their relationship while they're out solving something. Whereas this feels like the focus has changed, and it's like them going out getting drunk. Yeah. It's really funny, and it was entertaining.
But it could have been much shorter.
Yeah.
Tighter.
Yeah.
No, I think that to me was the overarching, not problem, because I still think it was good television. It's not bad television.
Yeah, and the performance is brilliant. Martin Freeman and Benedict Cumberbatch are brilliant.
Is superb. He really.
And it's it was an episode that was him basically holding court for 90 minutes.
But there were elements of it that were too flabby, and it's just been so tight and sharp previously. And I guess firstly, what do you want from the next episode? We've got one episode before this season ends, and that's it's over before it's finished. And I think that's my biggest issue with all of this, is that we've spent one episode catching up on last season. This episode I don't really know how it fits in with the Sherlock kind of canon. And then the next one is was that going to be spent setting up the next season, or is it going to be standalone?
From the trailer and what it needs to do, and the way they've set up this villain at the end of the first episode, it's like before they introduced Moriarty, he'd kind of been hinted at, and he was behind a lot of the preceding crimes. Yeah. So he had some kind of fanfare and menace before you actually met him. Whereas this guy's going to pop up out of nothing. Yeah. So it's really hard for him to have that same impact. But it does seem like this final episode will be darker, and it looks from the teaser trailer more like something in the style of the episodes gone by. Yeah. But I would think the two episodes that have been probably signal the future of Sherlock more than the next episode, simply because at the end of the last episode, they found out that John and his wife are going to have a baby, which you can only think is going to end up with more that kind of more character comedy style. Yeah,
trying to fit in the world of Sherlock with home life.
Because at the time, I think it did border on out and out farce at times, where he was using his intellect. It almost became as a bit like buffoonery to cut through the importance of the wedding. But I feel like that might now be more the focus of the show. It's him as a man rather than him as a detective.
So, but I guess the last question is Sherlock a victim of its own success? The first two seasons were so good. I still think it's been good television. I really enjoyed the first episode more than I did yesterday's, because I think it balanced the kind of black humour with a lot of the kind of mystery stuff, which I thought worked really well. When the show started and it was showing the version of how he survived, I was just they hadn't really got Derren Brown, and then it cut to the guy explaining it. I thought that was brilliant. That was really funny, really well done. Yeah. But it was just there was enough of that to keep it going. Whereas in the second episode, it was just thrown in there.
It was a little bit like it had ADHD. Yeah. And ultimately, the solution to the crime wasn't clever enough to bring those elements together for you to have that epiphany when, it all makes sense and that's brilliant. It was kind of a bit like, even if you had a tight belt on, you would still feel being stabbed.
I would have thought so.
And I can't believe the guy who then took off his garments and got into the shower didn't realise he was bleeding profusely. Yeah. It just didn't quite sit right.
Or if there is a medical reason for it, it wasn't explained properly in the episode. And maybe I'm not a medical expert. Maybe that is the case, but it wasn't explained adequately to make you think, okay, that's a really valid way of doing it. It just felt a bit like, oh, okay.
Also, I felt like I think the 90 minutes running times is quite a lot of pressure, and it's a lot of time to fill. And I also feel like it's slightly a victim of them rushing the cliffhanger. And rushing John moving on. And I think that's partly because they had a 2-year gap, so they had to move him on as a character. Yeah. But I don't, looking back and having those flashbacks of all the cases they'd done, I don't feel like they lived together for that long. Yeah. There was 2 seasons where they solved crimes, but it doesn't feel like they had that massive wealth of cases. And I know a lot of them were sometimes alluded to in the episodes, but I felt like you definitely could have had a couple more seasons where they were living together, and it was more them forging that relationship before Watson moves out. Yeah.
But
But Watson gets married in the second book, so
right, okay.
it's a bit.
And I'm not particularly au fait with the books, but did that continue? Did their relationship continue in the books?
I think I'm right in saying they did a lot of. The thing is, a lot of the Holmes stories were short stories, and they were titled after the central mystery, and that's all they were. Like all the Sherlock Holmes stuff hangs around that central mystery.
Right.
There isn't like a character piece.
Yeah.
They are like the adventure of the Orange Pips or the adventure of the Matchstick Men.
Right.
It's the mystery that is the driving force behind Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
Whereas this, not so much.
Yeah. So
yeah.
What do you want from season 4 if there is a season 4?
From season 4, I would like them to find that balance between the two.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that both can't exist or I don't like the character stuff. I don't like the character stuff when it's in isolation from what Sherlock Holmes and the myth has always been about, which is those two guys with slightly different worldviews out there tackling a seemingly impossible mystery.
Yeah.
And
I think that's the thing. Sherlock is all about that, as you say, that moment where it all comes together and you just think, that's genius, that's really clever. And I feel like we've been a little bit shortchanged with this season, so I want to see more of that.
So that's what we think of season 3 of Sherlock. We're a little bit mixed feelings towards it, but we want to know what you think in the comments below.